All right, good morning, everyone. We just hit the 10 o'clock hour, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us today for our Champions for Vibrant Health Leadership Network info session. We have a lot of great material to cover and excited to go over it. So before we begin, if I haven't met you before, my name is Sara Omari. I'm the Strategy Program Administrator with IEHP Foundation. So I help support our grant-making strategy and community impact work. So just a quick overview of what we'll be going over today. I'll provide a quick overview of the mission, vision, values, strategies of IEHP Foundation. We'll also cover the Champions for Vibrant Health Leadership Network, inclusive of timeline, goals, expectation, eligibility requirements, and evaluation. We'll spend a few moments going over the grant management portal. And with whatever time is permitting up to the 11 o'clock hour, we'll also go over questions and answers. We have a lot of information to cover, so just note that a recording of this webinar along with the PowerPoint presentation will be emailed to you afterwards and will also be available on our website at iehpfoundation.org/grants within 3 business days. Along the way, you'll see there's a Q&A panel. If you have questions, please type them in to the Zoom question and answer feature. I have some of my colleagues on the call today, and they're going to do their best to answer them live, but we may have to follow up after the webinar. So if you do want to follow up to your question and it's not answered today, please make sure to have your name tied into that question. And then if you do have some deeper or more unique questions, please feel free to email grants@iehpfoundation.org and allow up to 3 business days for a response. As we go through the material, there's a lot to cover today. A lot of this is included in the grant summary page, but there will be some more detailed nuance along the way. So beginning about IEHP Foundation, our focus is on igniting vibrant health in the Inland Empire. And a quick overview of how the IEHP Foundation came to be. So you may have heard of IEHP, that they're managed healthcare plan in the region that serves about 1 in 3, 1 in 4 members throughout San Bernardino and Riverside County. And back in 2021, they formed the IEHP Foundation. So we are a separate entity working together to advance vibrant health in the Inland Empire. So as the foundation, we're focusing on the social determinants of health, extending beyond the clinic into the community, to address the social determinants of health for our region's most vulnerable populations. And I'll go over what vibrant health is in a few slides. So what do we mean by advancing vibrant health? You may have seen that pop up a lot on our website through the grant summary. And first, it's our way of achieving our mission. So our mission is to inspire and ignite the health of the Inland Empire. And vibrant health means that the residents of San Bernardino and Riverside counties, so that's our definition of the Inland Empire, have access to and are experiencing a better, more fulfilling life, both physically, mentally as well. So our goal is to advance health equity across the region by partnering with community-based organizations. So we're very rooted in community, very rooted in partnership. And we look to address the root causes, the core needs to help improve health equity. So how do we do that? So one of the ways is we organize around the social determinants of health, and we use the vital conditions framework for that. So if you're unfamiliar with vital conditions, it's a newer framework to just organize the social determinants of health. It's been adopted by over 40 federal organizations and has a strong regional focus here in the Inland Empire. There's 7 total vital conditions, and as a foundation, we've adopted all of those to focus on to make sure that we're uplifting the health for the region. You can see the picture here, what those 7 conditions are, and we'll talk a little bit more about the specific ones this specific opportunity focuses on. So the vital conditions is how the foundation organizes our work. What do we do to invest in the community is outlined here in this slide. And there's 4 main ways that we look to invest in community for improved health outcomes. The first is through public policy and advocacy, and we'll talk a little bit more about how this applies to the Champions for Vibrant Health Leadership Network. But making sure to uplift the voice and the narrative of the region to make sure that additional resources, more resources are driven into our Inland Empire to address systemic issues that may be prohibiting maximum health in the region. We also have a strong focus on regional capacity building. You'll see that throughout this Champions for Vibrant Health Leadership Network opportunity, but we've also had some smaller regional capacity building grants that we've given out for smaller organizations to learn the business skills around nonprofit management. We also focus on direct community investment, and we're also investing in special projects and place-based projects. So you may have seen recently we have announced in Riverside County an investment in the Blue Zones project focused in 5 different Riverside County communities. And we're also looking on the San Bernardino side of the house to invest in a similar initiative. As I go through the opportunity, we also have additional ways to support the community, and one is by offering a meeting space here at our headquarters location in Rancho Cucamonga. So Inland Empire nonprofit organizations and community-based organizations can reserve a space free of charge for business-related meetings, seminars, and convenings. So if you're interested in hosting a meeting, we do ask for advance notice. You can scan that QR code there. This information is also available on our website. And you can see on the right-hand side, we do have pictures of our space, anything from larger conference rooms accommodating upwards of 120 folks to smaller meeting spaces that are more classroom sized. So as I shared before, we realized that we can't do this work alone. We're rooted in partnership, we're rooted in community. And so those vital community partners who collaborate and engage with us, regardless of funding. So if you come to a training, if you're part of our grants, if you attend an event, we consider you one of our champions for vibrant health. And within that umbrella term of Champions for Vibrant Health, so that's our large network of community partners helping us to move the needle forward on vibrant health in the region, we have our leadership network opportunity. That leadership network opportunity is what we're here today to talk about. Overall, it's a 2-year leadership development program that's coupled with general operating supports for Inland Empire community-based organizations that address various social determinants of health in our region. We look to this as more than just a grant. So it's more than just funding. It's really an opportunity to come together to amplify our voices and expand resources to build vibrant health across the Inland Empire. So it's really building that community, that network to uplift the narrative of our region. And so in the next few slides, I'll go over a little bit more detail about how this opportunity aligns with the community need that we've heard, our goals and expectations for the program, eligibility requirements, key dates and deadlines, and the application process as a whole. So alignment for community needs. So back in fall and spring of 2024, we hosted various listening sessions. Our fall 2023, spring of 2024, we hosted various listening sessions with over 100 different leaders from different various community-based organizations throughout the region. And we also did a review of the data of the nonprofit landscape and found that these needs continue to trickle to the top. One was the need for flexible multi-year funding that supports infrastructure and capacity building. So funding that's not just tied to a specific project or program. The other was that there's a need for investment in nonprofit leadership that extends beyond a one-day webinar or event. There's also a strong need for succession planning and developing that next generation of leaders. And there's also a strong need for collective advocacy and narrative building. Again, how do we attract more resources to this region? So we heard that and we shaped this opportunity to meet those needs and address these goals. One is increased organizational capacity. Another is increased collective advocacy, expanding private and public funding to the region, and expanding health equity as a whole. So in short, we're looking for this opportunity to build the bench of nonprofit leadership and trusted messengers in the community by strengthening our region's advocacy muscle and also investing in the leadership that are leading these community-based organizations. So overall, our goals and key measures of success, we're looking to make an impact at the individual leader level, the organizational level, the community level, and the system level as a whole. And so outlined in the grant summary was an expectation of engagement. So as part of this opportunity, we're looking for each organization to have an executive and an emerging leader engage in all activities over the course of 2 years. So this grant opportunity would take place from January 2025 all the way through December 2026. So who do we mean by executive and emerging leader? An executive leader is preferably the highest level staff member at an organization. So that could be typically your president, your executive director, your CEO, but it could also be another key senior executive leader, such as a COO or vice president. The emerging leader is a mid-level staff member at an organization who your organization has demonstrated the potential to merge into an executive leader at your organization or even another organization within the region. So it's really up to the organization to define who those leaders are. Both leaders would have to commit to attending 6 annual gatherings each year, 4 in-person local half to full day convenings. So that's where we're going to build in those leadership discussions. 1 in-person advocacy trip to Sacramento. So around 2 days, 1 night for that trip. 1 in-person leadership retreat. That's a total of 3 days, 2 nights. And also completing 2 biannual progress reports. And we'll try to keep that progress report pretty short. Some of the questions that have come up are, what are those exact dates for those workshops? What exactly is within that leadership development program? An IEHP Foundation is really rooted in learning, and we want to learn with our community partners. We want to come in along as a guide with them. And so we aim to develop a leadership collective that it's responsive to the needs of those selected. And so part of that is we're going to have those that are selected as part of the program help build and shape that leadership network. And so we're looking to assess who's part of that program, ask what their needs are to make sure that whatever is developed is responsive to the needs of those selected. Overall, IEHP Foundation is looking to select up to 40 organizations for this leadership network. So meeting the need for flexible funding, as I shared before, this is going to be a 2-year general operating support grant. So we leave it up to the organization, you know your organization the best, to spend the money in how you see fit, whether that's for innovation, for scaling up, for running a business, it's up to you. And we're looking to fund in 2 different tiers. The first is for organizations with an annual operating budget less than $1 million, but above that $250,000 for eligibility, which I'll talk about in just a second. And that grant award amount would be up to $25,000 per year, so a total of $50,000 over 2 years. For those organizations with a larger annual operating budget over $1 million, this grant award amount will be up to $75,000 per year, or a total of $150,000 over 2 years. And we look to disperse those payments in 2 equal payments in early December 2024 and early December 2025. So in total, we're looking to award approximately $2 million in flexible funding, multi-year general operating support to those organizations selected. So this funding is in addition to what those in-kind costs would be for the leadership retreat and the advocacy trip. So highlighting key dates and deadlines. This will be a 2-part application process that will adhere to the following timeline. So this application timeline is all through 2024. So we released the call for applications on June 13th. And we're looking to have those round 1 or LOI applications due July 15th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. There's also, for those that are selected to move on to round 2, or that final round of applications, they'll be notified in late August, so no later than August 30th. And that final round of application will be due October 4th at 5 p.m. For those that are selected to move on for that final round, we may also ask for an interview or site visit as needed, but it may not be a requirement. So for those that are remote, a site visit would not be mandatory. And those would take place in from October 7th to November 15th, with final awards being announced no later than December 2nd. And you may notice that we use the term LOI sometimes when referring to the round 1, and that's because that's the language that will be used in the grants management portal. We're just limited on what that portal can do. In terms of eligibility requirements, we will ask all applicants to complete a quick eligibility quiz that will go over these 6 questions. And I'll go over all of these in more detail in the upcoming slides. First, those that are eligible need to be a public 501c3 nonprofit. So they must have their own EIN. For this particular opportunity, we are not accepting those that are fiscally sponsored. This organization must also be in good standing with the IRS and not delinquent on any tax filings. They cannot be a private non-operating foundation. And we will not be supporting 501c4 organizations for this opportunity. In terms of the second eligibility requirement, we are looking for organizations that have been officially recognized for 3 or more years. And so this means that the organization has been given their tax exempt status as a nonprofit by California or the federal government for 3 or more years. We have had some questions pop up that if an organization has been established, they may have been fiscally sponsored for 3 or more years and now just have their EIN or have had their EIN for less than 3 years if they're considered for this opportunity. The goal with this eligibility requirement is to look to the organization to make sure that they're established and that they're a trusted messenger within their community and that they're fiscally responsible. So we would consider those organizations on a case-by-case basis. So if that second bullet applies to you, please email grants@iehpfoundation.org with a description on your specific scenario, and we'll follow up for consideration. And then in terms of the annual operating budget, we've been getting a lot of questions about this. So going over what we mean by annual operating budget. So first and foremost, the eligibility requirement is that the organization's annual operating budget for 2024 must be greater than $250,000. We recognize that organizations operate on different fiscal years. So if your organization operates on a calendar year, use the projected budget for January through December of 2024. If you're operating on a fiscal year, use the projected budget for July 2024 through June 2025. And you have a fiscal year that doesn't fall within those timeframes, we just ask that that fiscal year 2024 contain December 2024 in the budget timeline. Annual operating budget includes all anticipated revenue and expenses for the organization, those the cost of doing business. You do not count organizational assets, so dividends or buildings, towards that budget size unless you're actively using the revenue from those assets in 2024. And it's recommended that organizations that have had a significant increase in their operating budget in 2024 from previous years, when you get to the application section, there's an opportunity to provide a narrative of any major increases or changes or fluctuations. We recommend that you provide that narrative description of the reason why behind that application so that whoever is evaluating your application has that full story. In terms of the leadership engagement requirement, we already went over what an executive and an emerging leader was. So again, each organization must identify an executive and an emerging leader who can commit to serving the organization over the next 2 years. Each organization leader that's selected must have served the organization for no less than 1 year. Part-time employment and volunteer counts towards that time commitment. We may give consideration for leaders who've been at the organizations less than a year if they've served the Inland Empire for 2 or more years. We understand that different organizations may be going through staff transition, and we recognize the unique and nuanced experience of those organizations. So again, if this applies to you, please reach out to us to inquire if you're still eligible. And only one executive and one emerging leader can participate in the Champions for Vibrant Health Leadership Network. In terms of the population served, those that are eligible must be organizations that serve Inland Empire, so Riverside and San Bernardino County, families with children 18 years or younger from one or more of our priority populations. Our priority populations for this opportunity include those that are low-income households and or those living in poverty, communities of color, communities furthest from health equity, and so we're defining that as cities with a Healthy Places Index score lower than the 25th percentile. If you have questions about how to identify if that applies to your community, you can visit healthyplacesindex.org. There's also a link in the grant summary to see that. And then also we're prioritizing communities that may be remote or rural. Organizations do not need to be headquartered in the Inland Empire, but for those that aren't headquartered in the Inland Empire, you do need to demonstrate a significant presence in Riverside and San Bernardino counties. Again, our goal is to identify organizations that are trusted messengers within the communities that they serve. And organizations do not need to serve these populations directly. You could be a coalition, a consortium that supports those that are providing the direct services. Again, you would just want to highlight whoever's in that network that you support, that they do serve this priority population. And again, diving deeper into who our priority population is. So it's families with children under 18 years, and it's also organizations that address at least one of the following: basic needs for health and safety, humane housing, meaningful work and wealth, so that's around workforce development, and lifelong learning, so education, anything from preschool, higher ed, and work and job training. There's a link in the grant summary and also on the grant application. If you have questions or if you're curious about what may or may not qualify in each of those vital condition categories with more information. Organizations can address more than one of these vital conditions, and you may also address conditions not listed here, but you must address at least one of them. And again, refer to that grant summary with a link for more information. And then the other requirement that we're asking eligible organizations to have is a candid GuideStar Seal of Transparency rating. For 2024, that's either gold or platinum. So this is a seal of transparency. So it's sharing your financial, organizational, and program details. This allows us to leverage and not ask you every time we have a grant opportunity, but it helps save time on the forward facing for future applications. If you do not currently have a gold or platinum, you can update your candid profile with specific demographic and financial information. If you already have your candid profile, those updates, depending on if you have the information available to you, can be completed in a day. If your organization has not claimed or verified their profile, plan for up to 5 business days for your organization's account to be verified. And again, we're leveraging Candid GuideStar as a way to decrease administrative time to complete applications in the future and also enhance the data available on the nonprofit landscape. You'll see to the right a picture. This is a report that came out that shared about the state of diversity in the US nonprofit sector. We're also able to pull reports within the Inland Empire County region as a whole. So again, it's an opportunity to not only decrease administrative time, but also leverage a data source that's available to everybody. Here, again, Candid GuideStar is something that will need to be updated on an annual basis. And I have a link here with more information if you want to read up on Candid GuideStar. And assistance from our team is available upon request. So again, if you just email that grants@iehpfoundation.org, we'd be happy to assist you. You'll see here on the right, in case you're curious about what demographic and program information may be asked to obtain that gold level, this is a quick screenshot of that so you can get an idea of what information you'll have to have on hand to update that profile. And we're very transparent, and we want to make sure that if we're asking something of our community partners, we're also putting it into practice for ourselves. So IEHP Foundation also commits to maintaining a gold or platinum level seal of transparency in all years moving forward. So those were the eligibility requirements. In terms of the evaluation of round 1 applications, we will have a set of volunteers and foundation staff that will evaluate organizations based on criteria guided by the following principles. The first principle is equity. So prioritizing populations furthest away from health equity that are in alignment with our target population and priority populations. We're also looking for organizations that uplift collaboration. So those organizations that leverage stakeholder and community partner support and advocate at individual, organization, community, and systems level. And in case you don't already advocate at a certain level, know that we're also looking at the potential of organizations to engage in advocacy. So really collaboration, we're looking to see of those that are applying who are good partners and who are able to tap into their networks. We also are looking at the guided principle of learning. So organizations that have practices that value data-driven decision-making, outcomes evaluation, and adapting strategy based on continual learning. We're a learning organization, and we want our champions for vibrant health, especially those in the leadership network, to value learning as much as we do. And then we also are upholding the principle of trust. So for us, trust means demonstrating fiscal responsibility and also a commitment and success as a trusted messenger to families with children here in the Inland Empire. We'll be uplifting these principles in the evaluation process, and consideration will also be given to ensure organizations selected are diverse in size, reach, and regional representation. We want to make sure that the whole of the Inland Empire is represented in this leadership network. This is for round 1. These principles will also carry over into round 2. Round 1 will focus at the organization level, and if selected to move on to round 2, we'll be looking more at the specific leaders identified for the program. So that was the Champions for Vibrant Health Leadership Network. Now going into the more technical logistics part of it, how to apply. And in particular, how do you navigate our grants management portal? So first and foremost, I'll go over a high level how to navigate around our grants management portal and what to expect for the eligibility quiz and application. But I also wanted to let you know that we use Foundit GLM, so Foundit Grants Lifecycle Management, as our platform for managing grants. And they have a hub or a library and directory of resources available. So I've linked it here. And you can look up in case you have a question. You can always email us, but if you want a more instant response, you can definitely go to this directory to look up tutorials, pictures, and things like that that are helpful. As you are looking up different tutorials or if you have different questions, highly recommend using the word applicant as a keyword and searching for tutorials and support. And again, specific helpful tutorials are linked throughout the application process. They're linked here on these slides, but we also have them linked for the specific question they may apply to in the application and eligibility quiz. So on the onset, like I said, IEHP Foundation uses Foundation Grants Lifecycle Management, or GLM, as their platform to manage all grant and funding opportunities. Some of you may have used that. This may be your first time. To access that, we have a link on our grant summary. We also have an ongoing permanent button on our website. You see that here. It's an orange grantee portal button in the upper right-hand corner. You can click on that and you'll be directed to the grants management portal. Any available opportunity that we have will become available in the portal and will also be listed on our grants webpage. So as you're new to the grants management portal, the first thing you will need to complete is your organization profile. Each organization should only have one profile in our grant management portal. So if you've ever received funding from IEHP Foundation, your organization has a profile. And so if you do need that information, reach out to me at grants@ihpfoundation.org. I also want to call out that if another funder for your organization uses the same platform, you will still need to create an organizational profile. Unfortunately, we can't share profiles across the different funders. Each organization should only submit one application for this opportunity. If we do receive multiple applications from an organization, they will become disqualified from this opportunity. Communication is really important to us, and so we want to make sure that even as a staff, you're communicating with each other. And the information to set up the organization account is very minimal. You need the name of the organization, your EIN, address, email, phone, and a primary contact. In addition to the organization profile, each individual will need a user profile. Each individual should have their own unique user profile. You do not share logins. There will be some signing off on things. And so we want to make sure that each individual, each staff member have their own login. And each login will require a unique email address. Individuals that represent multiple organizations can have one login, and you can tie the different organizations to your account. There's a great tutorial on that GLM library, but you can also reach out to ask. So if we have any grant writers that may be representing different organizations, you can keep it all in one GLM account for those organizations that you're applying to specifically for IEHP Foundation opportunities. And for that individual user account, information that you'll need is a name, job title, address. Calling out, please use your official organization address or place of work. Do not use your personal address, email, phone number, and a password. We will ask that each organization identify one primary contact. So this contact is going to be the person that will be notified of status updates for the organization's application. You can assign multiple individuals to work on the application. So if you want to start the application and maybe when it comes to the finance section or a program section, your program manager may be better for that, or your CFO, you can invite them into the application. So multiple users can have insight into the same application, and there's tutorials there. It's linked here on the screen. But we do want to advise that communication between staff is very important, as prior versions of the application cannot be recovered. So if you have multiple people working on the application and one saves over the other, just be mindful of that. In terms of the eligibility, so the first thing you'll see on there is the eligibility quiz. It's a short set of questions. I've already identified what will be asked in that eligibility quiz. It should take no longer than 5-10 minutes at max to complete. And our intention with this is not necessarily to layer on another step, but it's really to save organizations time if they don't qualify for the opportunity. We realize you're busy people. We appreciate the time you spend working with community members, and we don't want to take that time away. So if you don't qualify, we don't want you spending time on the application unnecessarily. If your organization doesn't currently meet the Candid GuideStar requirement, but you could or you believe you can, we recommend closing out of the eligibility quiz and return once at gold or platinum level. The eligibility quiz, once you submit, it's submitted. It can be reopened, but it is required to reach out to a foundation staff member to update, to reopen that eligibility quiz. So there's a little bit of a time delay there. The other thing I will lift up is if you fully believe that you can reach the gold and or platinum level and you want to get a jump start on the application, you can mark yes for that question, or gold or platinum, and then start the application. But again, be mindful that that gold and platinum level will have to be achieved before the July 15th deadline, so before you submit that application. If you successfully pass the eligibility quiz, you'll be given an access code to apply to the full application. And if you fail and you have questions about why you failed, or maybe you marked a question incorrectly or have additional questions about a specific question, feel free to reach out to that grants email. So once you've passed the eligibility quiz, you'll be taken to the application, and it may show up as an LOI or letter of intent. For operational definitions, LOI for us refers to this first round application. And you'll see the word request being used a lot in the system as well. Request for us means an application. So every time you submit a different application for an opportunity, it's going to show as a request in the system. I want to lift up that you want to make sure to save the application periodically to not lose data. Even though it's a smart system, you will have to manually save each question as you go. You can preview all questions from the grants management portal. I know that's really important as a former grant writer myself, knowing what I'm going to have to fill out. So you can scroll through the application, but there's an also easy to download PDF question list available. And you see in that upper right-hand arrow, it's pointing to where you'll be able to receive that through the grants management portal. So you can download that and share it with staff as you need to. For a full list of round one questions, you can also click on the screen here. And you'll also notice throughout the application, there'll be a little C in a yellow box. And this is where having your Candid profile up to date comes in handy. So any of those questions that have that C, information can be directly imported from your Candid profile into that question. So there's instructions at the top of the application for how to do that. So again, trying to save you time along the way. I will advise that if you do import, just double check that it is correct and it imports correctly. So when you get to this round one application, there's some main sections that you'll go through. Again, you can download that whole question list, but the main sections are general instructions questions. Please read that thoroughly. It's quite extensive, but we did try to answer as many questions as we could in those general instructions. You will be asked of organization and demographic and program details outside of what will be asked in Candid. We have some light questions about financial details, so some information about your budget as well as a narrative. We have questions about your organization's board, some questions about the executive leader and the emerging leader that you have identified. And then there's 3 essay questions that are aligned with those principles for evaluation. We also have some optional sections. So again, completely optional. One is an additional information section. Again, we realize that everyone's situation is unique and nuanced. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a question that was a catch-all, that maybe there's something about your organization you want to make sure that we know, or that whoever's reading your application is aware of. And so we left a box for that, 1,000 characters in total, anything that you'd like us to share. So if there was a shift in staff, or there's an innovative opportunity you've been exploring, go ahead and put that information there. I also shared that IEHP Foundation is a learning organization. We're constantly learning, constantly looking at the iterative design process and updating and improving to make sure that we're meeting the needs of those that are applying. And so we do have some process feedback questions, again, completely optional for us. One of them is how long did it take to complete the application, how you heard about the grant opportunity, and then any other comments or feedback you'd like to share about the application process. So that question in particular is about the process and not about your organization. Again, that section is optional. Some other important notes to lift up and highlight. We strongly recommend to apply early. Again, round one deadline is July 15th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, so that's a Monday. So please allow sufficient response time for any questions. IEHP Foundation operates on a typical Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. schedule. And so again, as you email the grants email, please allow up to 3 business days for a response. You will also want to anticipate time needed to make any updates to your candid guide star if you do, and always account for any potential technology concerns. Late applications will not be accepted. In terms of status updates, email communications regarding the status of your application will come from our grants management portal. So that email you see on the screen, make sure it's marked as safe in your inbox to make sure that that email doesn't go to spam or a junk folder, so you can stay on top of where your status for your application is. You can also view your application status at any time by logging into the grants management portal. Also note that if you do reach out to that grants email account, the response will be coming from the grants@iehpfoundation.org account. A successful submission, so an application is considered and only considered successfully submitted if you receive a confirmation email. If you believe you've submitted and you do not receive that confirmation email within an hour of what you believe that you submitted, please reach out to grants at iehpfoundation.org to confirm. And then I want to also lift up, it's important to follow instructions. So please read all instructions carefully and thoroughly. We wanted to make sure to put information of value in those instructions, and failure to adhere to those instructions will impact the evaluation of your application. Continuing on with the important notes, we really encourage you to reach out. Again, we recognize that organizations have unique and nuanced experience. It's not a one size fits all. So if you do have a question or a specific situation that you think is unique to your organization, please reach out to grants. And again, not to sound like a broken record, but allow up to 3 business days for that response. And then we also encourage organizations to be honest. We really value transparency and honesty. And this opportunity is intended to be responsive to the opportunities and challenges facing Inland Empire nonprofits. So please be honest with us. We want to make sure that this meets the needs of the community, the needs of those selected. So if the question asks for your challenges, please be open and transparent about that. And those are all the slides I have. Again, if it went through quickly, this recording and the slides will be available within the next 3 business days. But I will go ahead and look to see what questions have been being asked in the chat to lift up some responses. So if you give me one moment, I'll just see what's been lifted. Okay, so one of the questions that has come through is, for the retreats and advocacy days, do we need to build those costs into the budget, or will IEHP Foundation cover those costs outside of the award? That's a great question. So anything that we ask you to be at, so whether it's an advocacy day or the staff retreat, we are covering the costs. So that $2 million of flexible funding that we're looking to put out to all organizations participating is just in the grant funding. That's not inclusive of the in-kind. So no, you don't need to build that into your budget. We will cover the costs if you're selected to participate. And then the other question that has come up is, do you have to have two leaders, or can you apply as a single employee? That's a great question. So one of our goals, if you go back to our goals for this program, is to meet the community need for succession planning and building the next generation of leaders. And so in order to do that, we want to make sure that we have the current established executive leader and the emerging leader. So you will need to identify an executive and an emerging leader in order to qualify for this grant opportunity. And then the other question that has come up is, how many organizations are planned to be funded? So we're looking to fund up to 40 organizations. So we want to make sure that it's right sized. We want to make sure that there's opportunities to talk and build camaraderie around your peers and build that network. But it's also expansive enough where we can really make an impact in the Inland Empire and build a collective narrative to draw down more resources. So looking to fund about up to 40 organizations. And I'm looking in the chat. If you have any other questions, I'll pause a moment here. Go ahead and type them in, and that way I can lift them up and ask in case there's any. And again, you don't have to be you don't have to have your overall organization headquartered in the Inland Empire, but you do have to have a significant presence serving those in San Bernardino and Riverside counties. So Oscar asked, is there a different focus for round 2 of funding? So those principles that we brought up, so equity, collaboration, learning, trust, those are going to be consistent principles for both rounds of evaluation. The focus of what we're evaluating is going to be different. So for round 1, we're looking at how the organizations adhere to those guiding principles. And for round 2, we're looking how the leaders identified adhere to those guiding principles. A great question. So another question that came up is, I'm still unclear about what activities we should be requesting for funding. Can you give examples? So this is not necessarily your traditional grant where you identify a project that you want to be funded. We're not asking you to submit a project budget. We're not asking you to submit a program budget. Our goal with this is to have a leadership program. So we're investing in the organizational past successes and potential. So so you'll go through and you'll answer those questions. So you're not asking for funding for specific activities. As I shared, we're going to be giving flexible funding. And so we want to make sure we look to these organizations as trusted messengers, and we look to you and we trust that you know what your organization needs. So we are not going to be asking for you to identify those activities in round 1. Because those activities that you may want to fund with those flexible funding may change as you participate in the leadership development program. You may talk to your peers, you may want to invest in capacity building for your staff. So we leave that open and up to the organization for how they spend their funds. So we're not looking for organizations to submit for a specific activity or program. Good question. So a follow-up question to that is, does the request for applications list allowable activities? So the allowable activities would be listed in the grants agreement. Currently, the application doesn't provide necessarily a list, but those activities that would be allowable expenses are those that qualify within a 501c3 requirement. So we're not putting a cap on those activities. We're not saying you can't use it for to pay your lights or for a specific program, or 10% has to go to capacity building. We're really leaving it flexible and open as long as it meets the IRS restrictions and guidelines for operating a 501c3 nonprofit. So being mindful of what those lobbying guidelines are as well. Another question that came up, if the emerging leader has been with the organization for less than a year, how do we show that they have been working with Inland Empire communities prior to working at this organization? And that's a great question. So you would want to reach out to grants at Inland Empire Foundation, IEHPfoundation.org. Lift that question up, and if you're able to have a resume from that emerging leader, please attach it to that and we'll be able to look that over. There's also a question, a very brief question in the application that we'll ask for both the emerging and the established leader or the executive leader, how long they've been at your organization and how long they've served the Inland Empire. So again, tying back to communication, it's talking to those leaders that your organizations wants to lift up through this process. And if they haven't been there for a year, asking for their resume and providing that to us so we can look through it and consider if your organization would be eligible. And again, that question came up about limitations for funding usage. And so because that question keeps coming up, what we'll do on our end is clearly call and articulate that and include that list in the follow-up email. So again, It's flexible, so as long as it's within 501c3 opportunities that the IRS has stated, it'll be good on our end. And then we have a great question. If we have an emerging leader or executive leader that left the organization after the award, what would be the protocol for continuing with the leadership network? So I'm assuming that question is if that leader left during that 2-year. So again, we recognize that there's nuanced and unique situations. So we would ask that as soon as that happens, you talk to us, and we'll go a case by case basis. So the intention is to identify an executive and an emerging leader that would be with your organization for 2 years. But if for whatever reason they did have to leave, we would just ask that you communicate that as much as possible. And then we talk through on a case by case basis what that would look like for the organization. And as we're reading this, and part of this info session, I just want to highlight and uplift is to learn more about the opportunity and really identify if it's the right fit for you. I will say this is one opportunity of IEHP Foundation. We really want to uplift regional capacity building. As you saw, it's one of our key community impact strategies. So if this opportunity is not right for you, that's okay. This is not going to be the only opportunity that the foundation will provide to community. So as you've listened to this info session, really ask yourself, really talk to your staff to make sure that this is the right opportunity for you. If it doesn't fit, that's okay. We will have additional opportunities. Another question, we don't have an audited financial since that costs money. Will candidate accept a 990 tax return that was done by a CPA? That's a great question. And I'm going to put that on my list to follow up with. I want to make sure that I give the appropriate and the right response. So that is one question that whoever submitted that will follow up with that. Also, too, there's great links and information, just like found in GLM. Candidate has a whole plethora of resources and links. Some of those are linked here on this PowerPoint presentation and also in the grant summary. So you can also refer to Candid as a source for that as well. Okay. And I'm just going down this list. So again, if these questions don't apply to you, I'm totally okay if you need to log off. I recognize time is important, so definitely want to highlight that. So again, just going down the list, we are small, and the staff I have is not ready to be a leader and not interested. You have to hire someone to be a leader. I only have 2 staff that I can afford. We're not asking folks to hire someone. We want to make sure that this is someone that has been rooted, and we also want to look for something that's sustainable. And so if this doesn't meet your organization right now, that's okay. So we wouldn't recommend hiring someone specifically to be eligible for this opportunity. I would say reach out for that, and maybe we can talk through that a little bit more in detail. The next question, I'm the director of a 501c3 foundation. 100% of what we raise goes to a hospital. I'm paid by the hospital, not the 501c3. Can I invite someone from the hospital to be on the team as either an executive or an emerging leader? That is a great question. We are looking for these leaders to be within your specific organization. But again, I recognize that's a unique situation and I may not be able to fully answer or get all I need to from this short bit. So if you think that this is still a fit and you want to inquire more, go ahead and reach out to me on that grants email. Okay. And then question came up. We have several team members we'd like to go through the program. Understand that it's just the executive and emerging leader. This opportunity comes around again in 2026. Will we need to take a break or can we apply again with a new team member? That's a great question. So a couple things I want to lift up from there. One, if you've received funding from IEHP Foundation before, you are eligible for this opportunity. Two, if your organization is part of this, we are looking for that 2-year commitment. So we are looking for continuity, part of that leadership development and building that collective narrative. We're really looking at the full 2-year on-ramp for that. And so if you think that's something your organization can commit to for 2 years, I recommend applying now. If you think that it may not make sense for your organization, and if this opportunity were to come around in a different year and your organization would be better suited, I would recommend waiting to make sure that it's a right fit for your organization at this right time. But for the specific opportunity, it's going to be one organization within the cohort that's live at a time. Great question, Ricardo. So what are the details for the biannual progress reports? Is this reporting on funding usage? That's a great question. So it's going to be yes and. So we would ask high level what you have been using the funds for, more so we can learn where is the need. So that's another way for us to gauge where the community need is, to see where the funds are being spent. But one of our focus is to also save administrative costs. We really want to make sure that you can spend the time where you need to spend it. So in addition to what would be on that progress report is also making sure that we're meeting those goals. So some of what's going to be collected is going to be discussed through and collectively agreed upon with the leadership collective. So that is a work in progress. Again, we want to make it responsive to what that final form of the leadership collective looks like. But we are mindful of the time, so we don't want it to be laborious or anything like that. Another question, if approved for this funding, would we be eligible for upcoming opportunities? It would be a case-by-case basis. So each opportunity would identify the eligibility requirements. So each opportunity may have unique eligibility requirements. That's a great question. But it would be dependent on what that opportunity was. A great question. We were just given tax exempt status 1 year ago. What should we include in our email? So include that you were just given your 501c3 status. Go ahead and include the name of your organization and the EIN number. In fact, whenever you reach out to grants at IEHP Foundation, the more you can identify which organization you're with, so at least the name and if not the EIN number, helps me to get to that information faster. So I ask at least you put your name and your organization name when you do respond at large to grants. But if you were just given tax exempt status, but you were fiscally sponsored in that email communication, go ahead and identify who that fiscal sponsor was and for how long they were your fiscal sponsor. If you weren't fiscally sponsored, if you have any sort of impact reports or other funders that may have given you grants, go ahead and identify that in that email to grants@iehpfoundation.org. So what was the HPI score needed? So those that we consider furthest away from health equity are those within the bottom quartile. So those with an HPI score in the 25th percentile and below. And again, that's outlined also in the grant summary. So we're a food assistance provider. So one of the questions in the application is, what are your organization's top 5 funders? Do we list in-kind donations or just dollars? So we're looking at who you believe to be your top 5 funders. So a lot of times in-kind donations can be just as valuable as dollars. So go ahead and list that. But at least one of those top 5 funders, we are looking to see what the financial support is. In that question too, we do ask if there's any limitations to the funding. So if it is an in-kind, you can highlight that it has only been an in-kind donation. And we're at the 5-minute mark, so I'll have this as our last question. But if our organization projected budget is $250K, would that make us eligible? So again, it's based off 2024, and those requirements are listed in this PowerPoint, but you have to have at least December 2024 listed in that, so at that $250,000 mark. I'm going to do one more question just because we have a minute here. So if our organization serves multiple geographic areas, do all service areas have to be under the 25th percentile? No. So we are, again, that's a consideration, and the more areas that may fall into that, but that's one consideration. So if you remember our priority populations, are communities of color, communities furthest away from health equity, those that have low incomes, and also those that are in remote and rural. So it may meet the needs of the others. So we're not asking for necessarily check boxes. We're really looking at the whole of the application. So not all service areas. We also want to know your reach and scope. So some communities you serve may be in the 25th percentile, others may not be, but we also recognize that there could be a halo effect of services. So no, not all areas need to be under the 25th percentile. And you don't have to serve every single one of those priority populations, but at least addressing one of those sub-priority populations. And on that note, we will end the webinar here. Again, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. We'll be go ahead and send out an email with a copy of this PowerPoint presentation and recording within the next 3 business days. And thank you, and look forward to getting to know you all. Thanks.